of our challenge, as you know, is from our connected world, is that news and information comes fast and furious, just like Rahaf was saying there. It's very hard to keep up. And while fake news is nothing new, COVID-19 has had its fair share of the absolutely ridiculous to sometimes dangerous false news stories. Just to name a few, these are the ones that I've seen. Corona beer caused the coronavirus. Chinese scientists created the coronavirus. 5G networks caused the coronavirus. All false. None of this, however, does anything to increase our trust in technology. But there have been some very interesting shifts in trust during the pandemic. And to tell us more and about how much of this trust will stick is Thimon de Jong. The most important thing to know, by the way, about Thimon is that he's here on his son Lua's birthday. So we all want to say an absolutely happy birthday to Lua. And I hope that he hasn't noticed you sneaking out to be with us here today. Very nice hat. Thimon is an expert in the strategic business impact of future human behavior and societal change. He's the founder of Wetson, a strategic foresight think tank, and he's here to speak about the trust pendulum during and after the corona pandemic.
All right, Edie, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm not going to talk about my son's birthday hat, which I just borrowed for the occasion, for the good spirits. But I'd like to say hello from Amsterdam. Thank you for tuning in. And I'd like to start with a big and serious question. And that is the crisis that we're currently in, this corona crisis, does this mean society will go through a paradigm shift? Is this the big reset? Are we on the way to great acceleration of big change? Is this changing things as society in the fact that in a few years' time we will talk about BC, before Corona, and AC, after Corona? Now, the interesting thing is there is a bit of people research on this. Research agencies and also news agencies have been asking people for the past weeks, what do you think will happen when the crisis is over? Will we bounce back to the way we have done things, or will things be profoundly different? Now, the interesting thing is in all these news polls and the research that is coming out, currently people are thinking, and the vast majority of them, and most of these polls and studies, it's around 80 to 90% of people think life after the corona crisis will be profoundly different. We won't go back to the way we did things before corona crisis. Now, if you then ask people, all right, so what do you think will change? It is interesting because the answers differ a lot. And the interesting thing is that people have the tendency to project their desired future on the post-corona times. They have the tendency to project their desired future on the post-corona times. So, for example, environmentalists are saying, yes, this is the great reset. It is nature who has pressed the pause button. She has pressed the pause button. And after this, we're going to pollute less. We're going to fly less. We're going to take care of the planet, and the world will be a better place. If you talk to a nationalist, they might say, this is what you get with the over-globalization. We are going to globalize less. We're going to reshore our production. We're going to close the borders, and we're going to take care of our own. That is the world after Corona. Then we have the tech-loving people who will say, finally, this is the great accelerator. Corona crisis, a great accelerator of digitalization. Because yes, it's 2020, but until a few months ago, we were still in a bit of the analog 20th century, and now, thanks to the corona crisis, we're finally fast-forwarding to a better digital world. Now, I think it's too early to say these big shifts will happen or might happen, because what we know throughout history, that with crises like these, if the crisis is very long, if the crisis is very severe, then we might see big shifts. But if the crisis turns out not to be as long, let's say we're going to restart the world economy this summer. In January of next year, we'll have a vaccine. The expectations is of people's behavior, now I'm a social psychologist, so that's what I'm looking at. People's behavior will quickly bounce back to the way we did things before. And yes, we will be in a global recession, but then and we saw a global recession coming anyways, because the past 10 years has been up and up and up. Now, if the crisis is longer, years, if it's more severe, if it's one of the worst scenarios, then we might see some of these very fundamental paradigm shifting, reset button accelerating, accelerator scenarios play out. But what can we say with certainty already today? And that brings me to the topic of trust, because when we look at trust, there is something paradigm shifting happening already today. And that is that the crisis we're currently in means the end of a 15-year-long trend on the topic of trust. Now, my session's title is The Trust Pendulum, because there's a way of looking at trust where trust is moving from here to there like a pendulum, going back and forward. And this crisis is the end of a 15-year-long trust trend, and the pendulum is now looking the other way. It's swinging the other way. So what is the shift I'm talking about? What is this pendulum actually doing? Now, I went fully analog, no PowerPoint today. Here we are. One side, the informal and personal, the other side, the formal and institutional. Now, what we have seen the past 15 years is that trust has been shifting towards the personal and informal and moving away from the formal and institutional. Now, the formal and institutional, that is large legacy corporations. It is the public sector, it's governments, it's traditional media. Trust for 15 years has been moving away further and further away, moving to the informal and personal. The politicians instead of the political parties, not the brands themselves, not the organizations themselves, but the people who represent the brands. Social media instead of traditional media, etc. Now, Corona crisis, pendulum has shifted, and now we suddenly see trust rapidly shifting back towards the formal and institutional. So what do we see? For example, of course, governments around the world. For 15 years, they have been seeing in research, we've been seeing trust moving away from the government. Now it's moving back. Why? Because in most countries, if you're lucky, you have a government that says, we will take care of you. We will protect you. We're going to spend all the money and resources we have, and even the money and resources we don't have, because we're going to borrow and lend to protect you and to take care of you. And in many countries in Europe, we see that it's the politicians and parties that lead in the middle who do that. And trust is moving back to them instead of the populists who are screaming on the side. Then, of course, we have the scientists and the academic world, also from the formal and institutional sphere. Interesting statistic from a recent Corona Trust update from the UK research and PR firm Edelman. They did a global study, 12 countries, just a few weeks ago, asking people about the Corona crisis. And one of the questions they asked is, all right, everyone is craving information during this crisis. What kind of experts would you like to hear more of, and what kind of experts do you trust the most? Now, number one expert we wanted to hear more of is scientist. Number one expert we want to hear more of is, again, the scientist. In this study, 85% of respondents globally said, we want to hear more from the scientist on this matter. And this is the general public. They want to hear from scientists. It is the politicians who are looking at scientists to base their policy making on. It is us people. We're counting on the scientist to create a cure, to create a vaccine. Now we're looking at the scientists, the formal institutional spheres. Now, if you compare this to just a few months ago or last year, and the role of science in, for example, the climate crisis, global warming, it was definitely not the case that we're all on the scientist side. Then it was the opinion makers, the opinion leaders, influential figures, certain politicians who were dominating the debate. Brings me to media. Interestingly, it's traditional media, formal and institutional, the old ones that have seen the largest uptick during the crisis that we're currently in. More subscriptions, more clicks, more likes, and then responsibility. Not only the traditional media, I have to say the social media are doing this as well, putting actual experts forward, the scientists forward, and actually putting less opinion makers, people with just an opinion, the influencers, and definitely not the conspiracy theorist form. The personal informal, a little bit less of that, We trust and we want the formal and institutional now. Also, very much formal and institutional are, fully analog here today, the list of key workers and the vital professions. Every country has its own list. This is the UK list here. We have, of course, the educator, key public services, local national government, public safety, national security. The interesting thing is, if you analyze this list, most professions and workers are from the formal and institutional spheres. And trust has been moving away from them the past 15 years, and now it's rapidly moving back. And the profession and the people we currently trust the most and appreciate the most are these people. These people. The healthcare sector, our doctors and our nurses. This is a recent Vanity Fair cover from Italy. Now, this is, my Italian is non-existent, but here it says Ioki sono, meaning I am here. These people hear us, saying I am here, I'm here for you. These people are actually risking their own, I see the slide is away, but I have a nurse still here. These people are actually risking their own health, sometimes risking their own life for a little pay, but they're here for us. And the gratitude and the appreciation from society for these people is huge. And I actually expect this gratitude and appreciation for these healthcare workers, but also for the people who stock our supermarkets, the garbage collectors, etc., but mostly these people, to last beyond the corona crisis. And that the gratitude, appreciation will last for years, maybe even decades to come. And I'd like to compare these workers to the Canadians here in the Netherlands. Now, here in the Netherlands, on the 5th of May, we celebrate our National Liberation Day, where we celebrate the end of World War II. And every year on the 5th of May, we invite Canadian veterans in to celebrate with us. Why? Because the Canadian forces came to our rescue in the 1940s to help us end the German occupation. And up until this day, when we think of Canada and the Canadians, from a Dutch perspective, we have gratitude for them and we invite them over for a celebration. And I think these people, we're going to celebrate and have gratitude for them for years to come. So, wrapping up, what does this mean for you as a business leader or as an organization? I have a strategic takeaway for you. Now, for years, a strategic takeaway has been, not just for me, but for many business strategic advice has been, have a startup mentality. Be like a startup. What I like to add now, as we are in this crisis, my advice is to not only have a startup mentality, because we need that, because we're being disrupted, we're in this change, but to also have a nurse mentality. And I'd like you as a professional, as a leader, and as an organization to ask yourself, like a nurse, who are you taking care of? Who are you taking care of? And were you to be trusted as a leader and as an organization when the crisis was there? And it's right here, right now. Who are you taking care of? And were you to be trusted as a leader and as an organization now we're in this crisis? Because that is how people will look back at you in the months and years to come. Now, you might say, all right, Thimon, that sounds wonderful, but what practically, can you give me an example? I have one example to finish off with, and that is from a French insurance firm called Maif, or Maif, I don't know how to pronounce it, insurance firm, who said early April, they said, we looked at our numbers from March, and what we've seen is that due to the crisis, everyone's sitting at home, we didn't have to pay out much insurance money because there were hardly any accidents, less burglaries, no car crashes. So what we'll do is that all that money that we didn't spend, which we normally, we're going to give back to you. So they sent the people that were insured with them, sent them an email, said, we'll give you two options. You can click here and you'll get your monthly premium for March back. That's one option. The second option is you can click here and then we'll donate your monthly premium for March to the French healthcare workers to battle the coronavirus. Now that is a nurse mentality. With that, I wish you all the best. I wish you loads of health, wisdom. I look forward to seeing you digitally the coming weeks and months and when corona is over in real life. Thank you very much.